You can call me Evan. And if it's all right, I'm just going to tell this like I lived it, because trying to polish it up feels wrong somehow. It was late last fall when it happened. My girlfriend Melissa and I were driving back home to Oregon after a weekend visiting friends in California. We'd decided to leave late to avoid the worst of the Sunday traffic, and for the most part, the drive had been smooth. Just us, the hum of the tires, and the soft patter of rain beginning to thicken against the windshield. We stopped for burgers at a little roadside diner a few hours north of Sacramento. The place was almost empty. Just a few truckers hunched over coffee cups, staring blankly at some muted football game on the TV. I remember Melissa laughing about the mural painted across the diner's walls. It was this weird, apocalyptic sunset scene with skeletons driving old cars. "Perfect atmosphere," she joked, pulling her jacket tighter around her. "Let's get our food and get back on the road." Neither of us realized then how true that feeling was. We got our food to go, hopped back into the car, and hit the highway again. The rain had turned heavier, fat drops hammering down so hard the wipers struggled to keep up. Visibility dropped to almost nothing. Even with my high beams on, I could barely make out the lines of the road. Melissa insisted I pull over for a bit and let the worst of it pass. She was right. As much as I wanted to get home, the road was a death trap. So I eased off at the next exit, just a narrow shoulder surrounded by open fields and pine trees bowing low under the weight of the rain. We sat there, engine idling, radio low, watching the storm lash around us. I finished my burger and was crumpling the wrapper when we both heard it. A knock, sharp, right against my window. I damn near jumped out of my seat. Melissa gasped, clutching my arm. I turned, and there she was. A woman, standing in the storm, soaking wet, her hair plastered to her face. She looked frantic, desperate. Her hands were pressed against the glass, and her lips were moving, though the pounding rain drowned out her voice completely. I cracked the window an inch. "You okay?" I shouted over the storm. She nodded quickly, mouth trembling, pointing down the road. Then she clasped her hands together in that universal gesture of pleading. Melissa was stiff in the seat beside me. "Evan," she whispered urgently, "I don't think we should." But looking at the woman, her thin sweater soaked through, her skin practically blue from the cold, I couldn't just leave her there. Every decent instinct in me said help. I unlocked the doors. "Get in," I called. She yanked the back door open and climbed in without a word. The car instantly filled with the smell of wet earth and something faintly metallic, like blood or rust. Melissa twisted around to look at her. I saw her frown, just a little. I figured she was just freaked out by the whole situation. I put the car back into drive and eased onto the road. "Where are you heading?" I asked the woman, glancing at her in the rear view. No answer. She just sat there, head down, strands of wet hair veiling her face. "Hey," I tried again, louder this time. She lifted her head slowly. And the look she gave me, God, I still see it when I close my eyes. Her face was slack, expressionless, but her eyes, those wide, glistening eyes, burned with something I can't even name. Not fear, not gratitude, something feral. I felt Melissa's hand grip my knee. Hard. "Evan," she whispered again, "something's wrong." Without any warning, the woman lunged forward between the seats, wrapping her arms around my neck. She was screaming, no, shrieking, this raw animal sound that tore through the small space of the car. Her hands were digging into my throat, nails scraping, trying to crush my windpipe. I swerved wildly, the car tires skidding on the slick road. Melissa was screaming too, trying to pry the woman's arms off me. I couldn't breathe. My vision blurred at the edges. Somehow, Melissa managed to land a solid punch against the woman's side, making her loosen her grip just enough for me to jerk free. I slammed the brakes, and the car fishtailed violently before jerking to a halt. I spun around and, fueled by sheer terror, shoved the woman back into the rear seat. She hit the door hard, and before she could recover, I reached across and yanked it open. The storm wind howled into the car. "Get out!" I shouted, voice raw. The woman clawed at the seat, trying to stay inside, but I grabbed her by the arm and dragged her out. She stumbled backward into the mud, still screaming, still pleading. "Please! Don't leave me! Please!" I slammed the door, locked it, and peeled away without looking back. Melissa was sobbing beside me, hands covering her face. I could barely see through my own tears of panic. We drove in silence for a few miles before Melissa shakily dialed 911. She gave them a rough description of the woman and our location. The operator said they'd dispatch a patrol car immediately. We didn't stop to wait. We just drove. When we finally pulled into Melissa's driveway, it was almost 4 in the morning. The rain had slowed to a steady drizzle, and everything, the house, the trees, even the air, felt muted, heavy, like the world itself was exhausted. Inside, Melissa collapsed onto the couch, trembling. I sat beside her, numb, still feeling the phantom weight of the woman's hands around my throat. Neither of us slept that night. The next day, the police called us back. They said they searched the area but found no sign of the woman, no reports of a missing person matching her description. Nothing. It was like she'd vanished. Sometimes, when the weather turns bad and the roads get slick, I'll find my thoughts drifting back to that night. And sometimes, when I'm driving alone and rain drums against the windows, I swear I can hear it again. That knock, that desperate pleading knock, asking to be let back in. I don't tell many people this story. Not because I'm ashamed or embarrassed, though maybe I am, a little. Mostly, I don't tell it, because every time I think back to that night, I get that sick, twisting feeling deep in my gut. It happened last summer, June of 2024. My name's Daniel, and that night, I nearly lost my son. Caleb was 9 at the time, smart kid, always asking questions, always restless. I'd promised him a road trip to Kentucky to visit my folks, something special, just him and me. I even told him he could pick the playlist, which, in hindsight, was a terrible idea unless you liked the sound of video game music on loop for 7 hours straight. It was one of those brutally hot days where the air feels thick enough to choke you. Our old Chevy's AC was working overtime, and still it felt like sitting inside a toaster. By hour 6, the atmosphere inside the car had grown tense. Caleb was tired and whiny, and I was short-tempered and sweaty. We bickered over stupid things, what radio station to play, whether he could have another soda, when we could stop for ice cream. Little things, but they built up, like steam in a pressure cooker. By the time we hit the empty stretch of highway somewhere in Tennessee, the sun was long gone and we were both raw nerves. When Caleb said he needed to use the bathroom, again, I nearly snapped at him. But something stopped me. Maybe guilt. Maybe the memory of my own dad on road trips, gritting his teeth behind the wheel. So I sighed and took the next exit toward a small rest area, barely lit, crouched between thick clusters of trees. There were no other cars there. Just a squat brick building with flickering lights and the endless symphony of cicadas in the trees. "Go quick, buddy," I said, leaving the car running for the AC. Caleb nodded and sprinted toward the restrooms, his sneakers slapping against the cracked pavement. I watched until he disappeared inside, then leaned back against the headrest, breathing deep. The silence felt almost heavy. I don't know how much time passed. Maybe 2 minutes, maybe 5. Enough that when I heard the back door open and slam shut, I didn't even glance around. "Seatbelt," I muttered, shifting into drive. I pulled out, back onto the road, wanting nothing more than to get to a hotel and end the day. I was maybe a mile down the road when headlights bloomed in the rearview mirror. A big, battered pickup truck. Way too close. At first, I thought it was just an aggressive driver. You get those, especially at night. I eased over to the right lane to let him pass, but he didn't pass. Instead, he stayed glued to my bumper, flashing his high beams once, twice, 3 times. "All right, buddy," I muttered. "What's your problem?" Caleb, or who I thought was Caleb, said nothing. I realized I hadn't heard a peep from the back seat. Something about that made my skin crawl. The truck swerved left, pulling up alongside me. The driver, an older guy, grizzled, wearing a ball cap, was shouting something through his open window, frantically waving his arm. I hesitated. I mean, what would you do? I had my kid in the car, or so I thought. But something about the way that man was yelling, desperate, made me slow down and pull onto the shoulder. Gravel crunched under the tires. The pickup jerked to a stop a few yards ahead of me. The man bolted from his truck and sprinted toward us. I locked the doors, heart hammering, and cracked the window a sliver. "That's not your son," he shouted, voice hoarse. "Whoever got in your car, it ain't your kid." My hands went cold. Slowly, I turned to look into the back seat. And that's when I saw him. Not Caleb. A grown man, maybe late 30s, thin and pale, with a filthy hoodie pulled low over his face. He sat there, hunched, eyes gleaming in the dim light, hands twitching slightly against his knees, like a coiled snake ready to strike. He smiled at me, a slow, greasy smile that made my stomach turn over. Without thinking, I threw the car into park and lunged for the door handle. I fumbled with it, adrenaline blurring my senses. The man moved too, kicking open the rear door and bolting into the darkness of the woods before I could react. The Good Samaritan, God bless him, chased a few feet before stopping. No sense in following a crazy man into the woods at night. I stood there in the middle of the road, panting, the whole world tilting sideways. "My son," I choked out. "Where's my son?" The man, breathing hard, pointed back toward the highway. "Back at the rest area," he said. "Saw the little guy waiting outside. When I saw your car pull away and that creep climb in, I knew something was wrong." I didn't even thank him properly. I just tore back into the car, spun around, and floored it back to the rest stop. The whole drive back, my mind raced with images. Caleb alone, Caleb scared, Caleb gone. When I pulled into the lot, the headlights swept across the sidewalk, and there he was. My boy. Sitting on the curb, swinging his legs, clutching a half-crushed bottle of orange soda. When he saw me, his whole face lit up, and he ran toward the car. I barely got the door open before he launched into my arms. "Dad!" he cried. "I thought you left me." "I'm so sorry, buddy," I gasped, crushing him against me. "I'm so sorry." I must have apologized 100 times on the drive to the motel. Caleb, mercifully, didn't seem too traumatized. He was more confused than anything. He said he'd taken a little longer because the faucet wasn't working right, and he was trying to get soap out of the dispenser. He didn't even see the stranger lurking nearby. As for the man who saved us, I never got his name. When I called the police later, they said they'd send a cruiser to search the woods, but they warned me not to expect much. That stretch of highway is vast and wild, and people disappear into it all the time. For the rest of the trip, I never let Caleb out of my sight, not once. Every gas station stop, every restaurant break, he stayed within arm's reach. And somehow, this trip that had started with us bickering over silly things, became one of the most important memories of my life. We talked more, laughed more, listened to each other's dumb jokes without snapping. I realized how easy it is in the rush of life to forget what really matters, how easily it could all be taken away. People ask me sometimes if I believe in evil. Not the supernatural kind, not ghosts or demons. I mean the kind that wears a human face, and every time they ask, I just smile and shake my head. I don't tell them about Alabama. I don't tell them about the night the road tried to swallow me whole. It was 2018. I was 29, stubborn, and full of that stupid pride you only realize you had once it's too late. I had this brilliant idea to drive from Ohio down to rural Alabama in one shot. 12 hours, no overnight stops, no splitting it up. Just me, the open road, and whatever playlist I could throw together at the last minute. The first 8 hours weren't bad. Just miles of flat fields and sleepy towns sliding past my windows. I had the windows cracked, coffee in the cup holder, podcasts playing. It felt almost peaceful, but somewhere around hour 9, things started to shift. The sun bled down below the horizon, leaving behind a bruised purple sky. The headlights felt like little pinpricks in a vast, endless dark. My GPS chirped, guiding me off the highway and onto a narrow 2-lane road. Supposedly a shortcut. I didn't question it. I was too tired to think straight. The road twisted and turned, chewing its way through thick woods that pressed up close to the asphalt. There were no streetlights, no other cars. Just me, the whisper of my tires, and the feeling of something ancient watching from the trees. I should have trusted that instinct deep in my gut, the one that was quietly screaming that something wasn't right. But I didn't. I kept going. I don't know exactly when I saw the barricade. It rose up suddenly out of the darkness, maybe 50 yards ahead. Bright orange traffic drums stretched across the road, like a line of swollen soldiers standing shoulder to shoulder. At first I thought it was construction. But there were no signs, no flashing lights, just the drums, and behind them, I squinted, heart stuttering. There was something else. A strip of cruel-looking metal teeth stretched across the asphalt. A spike trap, the kind cops use in high-speed chases. But there were no cops here, no flashing lights, no cars pulled over, just me. I coasted to a stop, engine rumbling low. The drums wobbled slightly in the breeze. The woods beyond them seemed to hum, alive with unseen things. For a long moment, I just sat there, gripping the steering wheel hard enough to make my knuckles ache. My mind raced. What do you do when the road itself tries to trap you? I popped the glove box and pulled out the aluminum bat I always kept there. It sounds ridiculous, but I always carried it. Some leftover paranoia from growing up in a rough neighborhood. I stepped out into the sticky night air, bat in hand. The silence wrapped around me like wet wool. I took a few cautious steps toward the barricade, every nerve screaming to stay alert. That's when I heard a voice. Weak. Ragged. Help, please. It came from the woods, maybe 20 feet to my left. My blood turned to ice. I turned slowly toward the trees. Something crouched low among the trunks, half hidden by shadows. A person, maybe a man, maybe a woman, bent double, limbs twisted in a way that didn't look quite right. Their head tilted sharply, like a dog hearing a strange noise. And behind them, more figures. Dark silhouettes melting out from the trees, quiet as smoke. I didn't wait to see how many there were. I didn't wait to find out what they wanted. I backed away, one slow step after another, not daring to turn my back. My heart slammed against my ribs, begging me to run, but I kept my pace steady. Panic would get me killed. When I reached my truck, I slid inside, slammed the door, and threw it into reverse. The spike strip loomed behind me, teeth glittering in the rearview mirror. I cranked the wheel hard and gunned it, cutting off the shoulder into the weeds. The truck bounced and jostled violently, but I didn't stop. The edge of the spike strip clipped my back tire, but I felt it hold. No blowout, thank God. As I barreled back onto the road, I risked a glance in the rearview mirror. They were standing there, a dozen or more. I don't know what scared me more, the idea that they might come after me, or the idea that they didn't need to. Like they were confident that sooner or later, they'd get another shot. Another fool too tired and trusting to turn around. I didn't stop driving for hours after that. Not until I reached a brightly lit gas station on the outskirts of Montgomery. I sat there for a long time under the buzzing fluorescent lights, hands shaking too badly to hold my coffee. Later, I looked up the area where it happened. There were rumors, of course. Stories whispered on obscure forums and late-night radio shows. People disappearing on back roads. Abandoned cars found with their tires shredded and no sign of the drivers. Weird setups like fake construction sites luring travelers into traps. The police reports always said the same thing. No evidence, no suspects, just vanishing points on a map. I never drove through Alabama again. Not by car, not by plane, not by any means. And to this day, every time I take a road trip, I double-check my route. I stick to the highways, I avoid shortcuts. And if my gut ever whispers that something feels off, I listen. Because the road doesn't care if you're tired. It doesn't care if you're trying to get home. Sometimes the road is waiting, and not everything waiting out there wants you to make it through the night.